The research entitled "Rubric as Learning Tool in Teaching Application of Derivatives in Basic Calculus." The authors: published in Journal of Research and Advances in Mathematics Education. Rubric has been associated with the term assessment used for grading and/or scoring. However, it might observe less, but it also designed a student's learning tool. This study was conducted to provide empirical facts on its effectiveness as learning tool in teaching applications of derivatives in basic calculus. To determine the effectiveness of rubric as learning tool in teaching application of derivatives in basic calculus. To determine the significant difference between pretest mean scores of experimental and control group. Post-test mean scores of experimental and control group. Pretest and post-test mean score of the control group. Pretest and post-test mean score of the experimental group. And the main gain scores of the experimental and control group.
Research design. This study utilized a quasi-experimental research design. Research locale. This study was conducted at the University of Mindanao academic year 2019-2020. Research instrument. The test questionnaire was used as an instrument to utilize the pretest and post-test to determine the student's academic achievement in the said mathematics topic before and after the experiment. To interpret the scores of the students were interpreted if it was outstanding, very satisfactory, satisfactory, poor, and very poor. Data analysis techniques. The data gathered from the pretest and post-test were tabulated for data analysis. Statistical tools. The following statistical tools were used for computation and analysis of data. These are mean score, standard deviation, t-test for independent samples, and effect size.
The table 2 presents the pretest mean scores of the control group and experimental group. This implies that the experimental group has a lower standard deviation, which means that data are more homogeneous than the control group. Both groups showed a low score in the pretest. The table 3 presents the post-test mean scores of the control group and experimental group. This implies that the students demonstrate adequate problem-solving skills. The table 4 presents the mean gain scores of the control and experimental group after the conduct of experiments. It shows that there is a more significant increase in the mean gain scores of experimental groups compared to the control group. This implies that the use of rubrics in the learning process teaches a learner to develop an understanding of the expectation of components of particular task given. This also makes a learner aware of his or her learning progress and process. In the test on the significance of difference between pretest mean scores of the experimental and control groups, Table 5 showed that the p-value is 0.473, which is above the alpha value of 0.05. Thus, it accepts the null hypothesis of the study. This means that there is no significant difference between the pretest mean scores of the control and experimental groups. This implies that before the experiment, both the experimental and control groups are equally likely in terms of prior knowledge before the start of the experiment. The results show that both groups are ideal for the study because each group has more or less on the same level. In the test on the significance of difference between post-test mean scores of experimental and control group, the table showed that the p-value is 0.033, which is below the alpha value of 0.05. Thus, it rejects the null hypothesis of the study. It shows that there is a significant difference between the post-test mean scores of control and experimental groups. It implies that after the experiment, both the experimental and control groups are significantly different in terms of gain knowledge after the conduct of the experiment.
Conclusion. Based on the findings, the following conclusions were drawn. First, both the experimental and control groups have almost similar prior knowledge on the topic about applications of derivative. Second, the control group has improved significantly in their performance on post-tests, which shows that the traditional way of teaching math or the conventional method is effective. Third, however, the experimental group show more significant improvement than the control group. The experimental group showed improvement significantly after the use of rubric as a tool in learning mathematics. Thus, the rubric is useful. Fourth, since both experimental and control groups showed an improvement, both of the teaching strategies, which are the traditional way of teaching math or the conventional method, and the use of rubric in teaching math, are effective. Moreover, the use of rubric as a tool in learning application of derivatives is effective in improving students' academic achievement as it teaches students to develop their understanding of procedural knowledge and can give them insights on rating their progress.